Kael Draven had everything people usually dream of: wealth, influence, and the kind of respect that came with being one of the youngest CEOs in the city. His office tower stretched above the skyline, a glowing beacon of ambition. Yet for all his success, Kael was known for being cold, calculating, and completely absorbed in his empire. It was late, long past the hour when most workers had gone home. The offices were quiet, the only sound coming from the hum of fluorescent lights and the faint echo of Kael's polished shoes against the marble floor. He often stayed behind after midnight, not because he had to, but because he believed the empire he was building deserved no less than his total devotion. But on this particular night, something unexpected happened. As Kael walked through the executive floor, reviewing the silence like it was his kingdom, he noticed a faint sound, a small, almost delicate noise coming from the direction of the restrooms. Curious and more than a little annoyed, he followed the sound. When he pushed open the door, what he saw made him pause. Inside, curled up awkwardly against the wall near the sink, was a young woman dressed in a cleaning uniform. She was fast asleep, her head resting on her arm as if exhaustion had defeated her mid-shift. Her name was Serenya Vale. Her hair, though slightly disheveled from long hours of work, still carried a natural softness. Her breathing was calm, almost fragile, and there was something about the way she looked, completely unaware of the harsh world around her, that caught Kael off guard. For a moment, Kael Draven, the man who never wasted time on things that didn't matter, simply stood there. He should have been angry. A cleaning staff member sleeping on the job, in his building? That was unacceptable. His empire thrived on discipline, efficiency, and perfection. There was no room for weakness, and yet, he didn't shout. He didn't wake her immediately. Instead, he found himself staring, questions filling his mind. Who was she? Why was she here so late? What kind of life drove someone to the point of falling asleep in a restroom of all places? Kael's chest tightened with a strange, uninvited feeling. Something about Serenya's presence seemed out of place in his perfectly calculated world. And deep down, he already sensed that this wasn't going to be a simple encounter he could brush off. That night, in the silence of his skyscraper, the ruthless CEO and the exhausted cleaning lady crossed paths for the first time. Neither of them knew it yet, but their lives were about to change in ways neither could have imagined. Kael Draven wasn't used to hesitating. In his world, decisions had to be swift, sharp, and final. Yet after finding Serenya Vale asleep in his restroom, he lingered longer than he wanted. Finally, the CEO cleared his throat, his voice echoing in the tiled room like a blade striking glass. "Wake up!" Serenya stirred, disoriented, her eyes blinking rapidly under the harsh fluorescent light. For a split second, she looked like a lost child, then reality crashed back, and panic flooded her face. She scrambled to her feet, almost slipping on the wet tiles, and bowed her head. I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't mean—" Kael's expression remained unreadable. His tailored suit, his cold gaze, and the way he carried himself made Serenya feel like she was standing in front of a judge. "Sleeping on the job," he said flatly. "Do you have any idea what this means?" Her throat tightened. She had been warned by her supervisor before. One mistake, and you're gone. Serenya couldn't afford to lose this job. Not when her younger brother depended on her income. Not when their rent was already overdue. "I'm sorry," she repeated, her voice trembling. "It won't happen again, I promise." Kael studied her. He expected excuses, maybe defiance, but not this raw desperation. Something about her tone made him pause, but only briefly. "You're being paid to clean, not nap," he said. "If you can't handle that, there are 100 others who will." The words cut like a whip. Serenya swallowed hard, her pride warring with her fear. She wanted to defend herself, to tell him about the double shifts, about her brother's hospital visits, about how exhaustion had finally won. But she also knew Kael Draven wasn't the kind of man who cared about personal struggles. To him, employees were either efficient or replaceable. Still, the silence stretched, and she felt the need to speak. "I work 14 hours a day, sir," Serenya said softly, almost whispering. "Sometimes, my body just gives out. But I'll work harder. Please don't fire me." Her honesty caught Kael off guard. Most people tried to sugarcoat their failures or twist the narrative to protect themselves. She simply laid it bare, with no agenda but survival. For a moment, Kael felt an unexpected pang, a flicker of something he didn't recognize. Compassion, maybe? No, that was too foreign. He pushed it aside. "You should have thought about that before collapsing in my restroom," he replied coldly. but his tone lacked the finality he usually carried when delivering judgment. Serenya nodded quickly, biting her lip to stop it from trembling. She lowered her gaze, waiting for the inevitable dismissal. But instead of firing her on the spot, Kael said something he hadn't planned. "Get back to work." Her head shot up in disbelief. I can stay?" "For now," Kael said, his eyes narrowing. "But consider this your only warning. I don't tolerate weakness. If I see you slacking again, you're done. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir, thank you, sir." Her relief was so visible it almost annoyed him. Almost. Kael turned on his heel and left the restroom, his mind unsettled. He couldn't explain why he had given her another chance. It wasn't like him. He hated inefficiency. He should have replaced her immediately. Yet something about the way she looked exhausted but still clinging to dignity had stopped him. Later that night, as Kael sat in his office reviewing contracts, he found his focus drifting. Numbers blurred on the page, replaced by the image of Serenya curled up on the cold tiles. He shook his head in irritation. Why did he care? She was just a cleaning lady. Replaceable. Insignificant. And yet, a knock at the door broke his thoughts. It was Marcellus Venn, his trusted assistant, carrying a stack of documents. "Long night again, sir?" Marcellus asked, setting the papers down. His eyes flickered with curiosity. "I saw one of the cleaning staff leaving in a hurry earlier. Everything all right?" Kael's gaze hardened. "Irrelevant. Get me the quarterly report from Dorian Crest by morning." Marcellus nodded, though he couldn't help noticing the tension in his employer's tone. Kael Draven wasn't easily rattled. Something had happened, but Marcellus was wise enough not to press further. When the office finally emptied, Kael leaned back in his chair, staring at the city lights outside his window. He thought of Serenya again, of her worn-out uniform, her trembling apology, and her quiet plea to keep her job. It bothered him, not because she had broken the rules, but because she had forced him to see something he usually ignored, the human cost of his empire. Meanwhile, Serenya finished her shift in silence. Every movement felt heavier, weighed down by the fear of what had almost happened. She could still hear Kael's voice, cold and unforgiving, but also the strange mercy hidden in his words. Her hands ached from scrubbing floors, her knees sore from bending. Yet as she gathered her cleaning supplies, she felt a spark of determination. "I can't afford to mess up again," she told herself. Not for me, for Eli. Eli Vale, her younger brother. The reason she endured the endless shifts and sleepless nights. He was barely 17, fragile from the illness that had haunted him since childhood. Serenya had promised herself she would protect him no matter what, even if it meant sacrificing her own dreams. As she walked home through the dim streets, Serenya lifted her chin. Tonight had been a warning, but it was also a chance. She still had her job. She would prove to Kael Draven and to herself that she wasn't weak. Back in his tower, Kael finally closed his laptop. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about profits or mergers. Instead, he was wondering about a cleaning lady who should have been invisible in his world, but somehow wasn't. Their clash had been small, almost trivial, but it was the beginning of something neither of them could predict, because sometimes change doesn't start with a grand event. Sometimes it begins with a single moment, like a CEO finding a cleaning lady asleep on the restroom floor and choosing not to walk away. The next morning, Serenya Vale stood in front of the towering glass building once again. The skyscraper gleamed in the early light, its mirrored surface catching the sunrise, as if to remind everyone who entered that this was a place of power, perfection, and relentless ambition. For Serenya, it was also a place of fear. Her heart beat faster as she swiped her ID card at the employee entrance. Every step into the lobby felt heavier, every glance from the security staff more pointed. Last night's encounter with Kael Draven replayed in her mind like a loop she couldn't escape. She hadn't been fired yet, but mercy from a man like Kael felt less like forgiveness and more like a stay of execution. Inside, she grabbed her cart of cleaning supplies. Normally, she kept her head down and worked in silence, but this morning something was different. Whispers floated through the hallways. Other cleaning staff eyed her strangely, their gazes full of curiosity or thinly veiled envy. It didn't take long before one of them spoke up. "You," a woman hissed, stepping in front of her. The name tag on her uniform read Mrs. Halden, one of the senior supervisors. Her face was sharp, her voice sharper. "I heard about last night," Mrs. Halden sneered. "Falling asleep on the job, in the executive restroom no less. Do you have any idea how many rules you broke?" He said Sadi. Serenya froze. So people knew. Somehow, Word had spread. It won't happen again, Serenya whispered, gripping the handle of her cart. Mrs. Halden stepped closer, her perfume heavy, suffocating. You should have been fired immediately, but for some reason Mr. Draven let you stay. Do you know what that makes you look like? Serenya shook her head, fear clawing at her throat. It makes you look like you're special, like the CEO has a reason for keeping you. And let me tell you, girl, no one here is special. Not you, not me. We're disposable. If you get in his good graces, fine, but don't drag the rest of us down when your luck runs out. How is the rest? Everyone have ne 5 has pon faultier. The humiliation stung worse than the words themselves. Serenya lowered her gaze, fighting the urge to cry. She had endured worse before, but something about Mrs. Halden's cruel tone cut deeper than usual. Now get back to work, Halden snapped, and pray you don't slip up again, because next time, not even Mr. Draven's pity will save you. Meanwhile, on the top floor, Kael Draven sat at his desk, his eyes on the city but his mind elsewhere. He had signed off on 3 contracts that morning, rejected a proposal from Dorian Crest without hesitation, and still, he felt distracted. Numbers usually commanded his full attention, but now they blurred, giving way to an image he couldn't push away. Serenya Vale, standing small and trembling in his restroom. Why had he let her stay? He couldn't justify it. Every instinct screamed that she was inefficient, a liability, yet something had stopped him, something he didn't like admitting. A knock broke his thoughts. Marcellus Venn entered, carrying a folder. Quarterly logistics, Marcellus said smoothly. Also a minor HR issue you might want to be aware of. One of the cleaning staff, Serenya Vale, has been reported for negligence. Kael's jaw tightened. Negligence? Marcellus nodded. Apparently, she was found asleep during her shift. Several supervisors have already raised concerns. The expectation is that she'll be dismissed. Kael leaned back in his chair, his expression carefully neutral. And yet she's still here. Yes, Marcellus said, hesitating. Because you allowed it. The silence stretched. Marcellus rarely questioned him, but this time his words carried an unspoken curiosity. Kael drummed his fingers on the desk. Is this worth my time? Not usually, Marcellus replied. But gossip travels quickly, sir. If people believe rules can be bent, it sets a precedent. Kael hated gossip. He hated distractions. Yet the thought of Serenya being hounded by supervisors irritated him more than he expected. Leave it, Kael said finally. She stays. I'll handle it if it escalates. Marcellus bowed his head, though his eyes lingered with faint intrigue. As you wish. The crossing of paths. That evening, Serenya was assigned to clean the executive floor. It was the one place she dreaded most, the place where Kael Draven himself might appear without warning. Her hands trembled as she polished the glass walls, her reflection staring back at her with exhaustion. She was midway through dusting when the elevator doors slid open. Kael stepped out. The air shifted instantly. His presence was magnetic, commanding so much so that Serenya nearly dropped her cloth. She quickly lowered her head, pretending to focus on her work, but Kael's eyes found her. He didn't speak at first, only watched as she bent down to wipe a corner of the floor, her movements precise, almost desperate to appear diligent. Finally, he broke the silence. You're still here. Serenya flinched at the sound of his voice. Yes, sir. I'm trying harder. Kael's gaze was sharp, assessing. I hear there's been talk, that some believe you've been treated differently. Her heart sank. She knew what he meant. I don't want special treatment, Serenya said quickly. I just want to keep my job. Kael studied her, his expression unreadable. Then prove you deserve it. Something in his tone made her look up, just for a second. Their eyes met, and in that fleeting moment, Serenya saw something she hadn't expected. Not anger, not disdain, but something else. A flicker of curiosity, maybe even doubt. She lowered her gaze again before it lingered too long. Yes, sir, she whispered. Kael said nothing more. He turned, his footsteps echoing down the hall, but his mind was no longer calm. Why had he stopped to speak to her at all? Why did he care whether she proved herself? He told himself it was about discipline, about setting standards, but deep down, he wasn't convinced. The weight of secrets. By the time Serenya finished her shift, the city was already cloaked in night. She walked home through narrow streets, clutching her bag close. When she reached the small apartment she shared with her brother Eli, she pushed open the door quietly. Eli was on the couch, pale but smiling faintly as he looked up from a book. You're late again, he teased weakly. Serenya smiled, though her eyes burned with exhaustion. Work ran long. She moved to sit beside him, brushing his hair back gently. Eli had always been the bright one, full of dreams she couldn't afford. But his illness kept him tethered, relying on her sacrifices. "Are you eating enough?" she asked softly. "You worry too much," Eli said, though his thin frame betrayed him. Serenya's chest tightened. She couldn't let him see her fear. Not tonight. Instead, she forced a smile. "I'll make us something. Don't move." As she cooked in their tiny kitchen, her thoughts wandered back to Kael Draven. His voice, his piercing gaze, the strange way he had looked at her. It unsettled her. He was a man from another world, untouchable, dangerous even, and yet he was now tangled in her life in a way she couldn't explain. High above, in his penthouse, Kael poured himself a glass of scotch. The amber liquid caught the city lights as he swirled it absently. He had faced hostile takeovers, ruthless negotiations, and international scandals without flinching. Yet the memory of a cleaning lady's eyes followed him into the quiet of his home. It irritated him. It intrigued him. Kael Draven wasn't used to questions without answers, and Serenya Vale had just become a question he couldn't ignore. The morning air was crisp when Serenya Vale arrived for her shift. She clutched her ID card tightly, her stomach tied in knots. The whispers hadn't stopped since the night Kael Draven found her asleep in the restroom. If anything, they had grown sharper, spreading through the staff like wildfire. Some whispered that she was lucky. Others muttered uglier suggestions that she had caught the CEO's eye in a way no one dared say aloud. Serenya tried to block it out, but the words clung to her like shadows. The supervisor's wrath. It wasn't long before Mrs. Halden struck again. "Vale!" Her voice cracked through the corridor like a whip. Serenya froze mid-task, the rag trembling in her hand. "Yes, ma'am?" Halden's eyes narrowed into slits. "I inspected the east wing this morning. Dust on the ledges, smudges on the glass. Do you call that work?" Serenya's chest tightened. She knew she had cleaned those surfaces the night before. Halden wasn't pointing out real mistakes, she was looking for reasons. "I'll go over them again," Serenya said softly. "See that you do," Halden snapped. Then, leaning closer so no one else could hear, she added, "One slip, Vale. Just one more, and I'll have you out the door. I don't care what miracle saved you last time." Serenya lowered her gaze. She wanted to fight back, to shout that it wasn't fair, but fighting wouldn't feed Eli, and pride wouldn't pay rent. So she swallowed her anger and whispered, "Yes, ma'am. Have there's 5 the bread from by the 7-7. Have the bread severmatted. In not." Overheard. What Serenya didn't know was that Kael Draven had entered the corridor just in time to hear the last of Halden's threat. He stopped, unseen behind the corner, his sharp eyes narrowing. He wasn't a man who usually paid attention to the cleaning staff or their supervisors, but something about the venom in Halden's tone made his jaw clench. "Pathetic," Halden muttered as she walked away, heels clicking against the floor. When the hall was empty, Kael stepped out. His gaze landed on Serenya, who stood frozen, gripping her rag with trembling fingers. She stiffened as she noticed him, quickly straightening. "Sir," she murmured, lowering her head. Kael studied her in silence. He should have walked away. He should have ignored it, after all. What was one cleaning staff struggle to him? But instead, he found himself asking, what did she mean? Serenya's breath caught. She looked up, startled by the question. His tone wasn't cold this time, it carried something else. Curiosity? Concern? "It's nothing," she said quickly. I'll just work harder." Kael's gaze lingered, sharp as glass. He could see the lie in her eyes, but he didn't press. "Make sure you do," he said, his voice returning to its usual steel. Yet as he walked away, his chest tightened with something unfamiliar. The breaking point. By late afternoon, Serenya's body ached from scrubbing and polishing non-stop. She pushed herself harder than ever, desperate to leave no room for criticism. But exhaustion was a cruel companion. While carrying a heavy bucket of water down the hall, her foot slipped on a wet patch. The bucket toppled, water spilling across the polished floor. Serenya fell to her knees, gasping as pain shot through her wrist. "Clumsy," a voice sneered. Halden again. She appeared like a hawk swooping down on prey. "Useless girl. Look at this mess." Serenya struggled to push herself up, biting back tears. "I'll clean it," she whispered. "You'll do better than that," Halden snapped. "I'm writing a report. That's strike 2. One more, and you're out." 12. For the first time, Serenya's control cracked. Her eyes burned as she whispered, "Why are you doing this?" "I'm trying Trying doesn't matter, Halden spat. Results do, and you'll never measure up. Halden turned sharply, heels clicking away. Serenya sank back to the floor, her chest heaving. Her wrist throbbed where she had landed, but worse than the pain was the weight in her chest. She couldn't lose this job. Not now. Not when Eli depended on her, the witness. What neither of them realized was that Kael had been in the next corridor, reviewing documents with Marcellus. The commotion drew his attention, and he had witnessed nearly the entire scene. "Should I intervene?" Marcellus asked carefully, noting the flicker in his employer's eyes. Kael's jaw tightened. "No, I'll handle it." Marcellus nodded, though curiosity burned in his gaze. Kael Draven was not known for involving himself in staff drama. This was unusual, very unusual, an unlikely conversation. That evening, Serenya remained after hours to finish cleaning the mess. Her wrist throbbed, but she pushed through, scrubbing the floor until the marble gleamed. When she finally sat back, her body sagged with exhaustion. The sound of footsteps made her jolt. Kael stood at the end of the hall, his silhouette framed by the dim light. He didn't speak at first, only watched her. "You're injured," he said finally, his voice low. Serenya quickly hid her wrist behind her back. "It's nothing, just a small fall." Kael stepped closer, his presence overwhelming in the quiet hall. "Mrs. Halden threatened you." Serenya's eyes widened. "You heard?" His gaze bore into hers. "I don't tolerate incompetence, but I also don't tolerate weakness from those who lead." Halden crossed a line. Serenya's lips parted in shock. She hadn't expected him to acknowledge it, let alone defend her. "Why?" she whispered. Kael didn't answer right away. He wasn't sure himself. Why was he involving himself in this? Why did he care whether Serenya Vale kept her job or not? "You said you work for your brother," he said finally. "That true?" Her breath caught. "Yes, Eli. He's sick. I take care of him." Kael's expression didn't soften, but something shifted in his eyes, a flicker of understanding. "You have one chance," he said. "Prove you're worth it. Not to Halden, to me." Serenya's heart pounded. "I will. However..." He did a life file ascend. Their eyes locked, and for a brief moment, the air between them thickened with something unspoken. Tension. Recognition. The first spark of something neither of them would admit. Kael broke the moment first, turning away. "Go home. Rest. You'll be back tomorrow." "Yes, sir," Serenya whispered. As his footsteps faded, she pressed her hand to her chest, her heart still racing. She should have been terrified, but instead, for the first time, she felt something else. Hope. In the quiet of night, back in his penthouse, Kael poured himself another drink. But tonight, the scotch tasted different. He had spent years building walls so high no one could climb them, yet a cleaning lady with tired eyes and a wounded wrist had slipped through a crack he hadn't noticed. It unsettled him. It intrigued him. Kael Draven told himself he was only keeping an eye on her because discipline mattered, because weakness couldn't be allowed to fester in his company. But deep down, he knew it was a lie. Serenya Vale wasn't just another employee. She was becoming something else entirely, something dangerous. "Vale." Conference room 4. Serenya froze at the sharp command from Marcellus, Kael's trusted aide. His voice carried no explanation, no softness, just expectation. Her heart pounded as she walked the sterile halls toward the glass-walled room. When she stepped inside, her breath caught. At the long table sat Kael Draven himself, his presence cold and immovable. Across from him, Mrs. Halden fidgeted, her usual superiority absent. "Sit," Kael ordered. Serenya obeyed, lowering herself into a chair at the far end. She kept her gaze on her hands, afraid to meet anyone's eyes. Kael's voice cut through the silence. "Mrs. Halden, your leadership has been called into question." Halden sputtered. "Sir, I witnessed your conduct yesterday," Kael interrupted, his tone sharp as broken glass. "I demand discipline, not cruelty. There is a difference." "He's not too good." Serenya's chest tightened. He had heard everything. Halden's face paled. "I only meant to enforce standards." "You undermined them," Kael snapped. "By targeting staff unfairly, you weaken the foundation of this company. Effective immediately, you are relieved of supervisory duties. Report to HR." The words struck like a thunderclap. Halden's mouth fell open. "Sir, please." "That will be all," Kael said, final and unyielding. Halden's eyes flicked toward Serenya, venom blazing behind her panic, but she dared not speak further. With stiff, trembling movements, She rose and left the room. The aftermath. When the door shut, silence pressed in. Serenya could barely breathe. "You," Kael said, his gaze turning on her. Her stomach lurched. "Yes, sir." His eyes pinned her in place. "You're not free from expectation. I don't save people to watch them fail. Do your work. Exceed it. Prove me right." Serenya swallowed hard. Gratitude and fear warred inside her. He had defended her. No one had ever done that before. And yet, his words were not soft. They were a challenge. "I will," she whispered. Kael studied her for a long, unreadable moment. Then he rose, gathering his papers. "Good." As he walked away, Serenya's heart pounded. She knew the whispers would return, sharper than ever. They would say she had cost Halden her job, that she had special protection. But for now, she didn't care. For the first time, she felt seen. Seen. The whispers return. By midday, the rumors had spread like wildfire. Staff clustered in corners, voices lowered but urgent. She got Halden demoted. The CEO himself stepped in because of her. There must be something going on. There has to be. Serenya kept her head down, scrubbing glass until her arms ached. Every whisper stabbed at her resolve, but she forced herself to ignore it. It didn't matter what they thought. Eli was what mattered. Keeping this job was what mattered. A chance encounter. That evening, long after her shift had ended, Serenya made her way to the bus stop. The city streets glowed with neon, slick with the drizzle of a recent rain. She clutched her worn jacket tighter, praying the bus would come soon. But the bus schedule had been disrupted. A notice taped to the stop warned of delays due to construction. Serenya sighed, exhaustion weighing on her bones. She would have to walk 40 minutes in the rain. Vale. She spun at the voice, heart leaping. Kael Draven stood a few paces away, his black car idling at the curb. His driver waited silently behind the wheel. "Sir," she stammered, rain dripping from her lashes, "you'll catch your death waiting here." His tone was matter-of-fact, as though offering a ride to a cleaning staff member was the most natural thing in the world. Her chest tightened. I couldn't possibly." "Get in," Kael said, leaving no room for refusal. Inside the car, the interior smelled of leather and cedar, warm and insulated against the storm outside. Serenya sat stiffly on the edge of the seat, her damp jacket clutched in her lap. Kael studied her from across the dimly lit cabin. "You live far?" She nodded. 40 minutes by bus. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Unacceptable. The scenery. And something. Serenya blinked. "I don't mind. It's all I can afford." Kael's gaze lingered on her for a long moment. Something flickered in his eyes, something he quickly masked. "Where exactly?" She hesitated, then gave her neighborhood. A modest, crumbling part of the city no CEO ever set foot in. "Driver," Kael ordered. The car eased into motion. The silence between them was heavy, filled with the hum of rain against glass. Serenya's heart thundered. She should say something. She should thank him. Why are you helping me?" she whispered finally. Kael's eyes turned to the window, his profile sharp in the passing city lights. "Because I expect results, and results require survival." And they was the tension to a Christ citing me, and his what are the dreams. He was like flanging lound. He was no have some, though. It wasn't the answer she had hoped for, but there was something beneath it, something unspoken. Eli. When the car pulled up to her, building a weathered structure with peeling paint and flickering lights, Serenya flushed with embarrassment. "This is it," she murmured. Kael's eyes scanned the building, unreadable. "You live here?" "Yes." His gaze flicked toward the single-lit window on the 3rd floor. A boy's shadow moved past the curtains. "Your brother?" he asked. Serenya's breath caught. "Yes, Eli." Kael didn't reply. He only nodded once. "Take care of him. Have to sending to the life to gave the plays and the life to fictive considerant. Have a gave to one follows of the fanst of their reshames and with the 10 for the board." Before she could respond, the car door opened, and she was gently ushered out by the driver. The moment she stepped into the drizzle, the car pulled away, sleek and untouchable against the broken streets. Serenya stood there, rain soaking into her shoes, her heart racing. He knew. He really knew. Behind closed doors, inside his penthouse later that night, Kael poured himself a drink but found no satisfaction in it. His thoughts kept circling back to the rain-soaked girl in his car, to the flicker of her eyes when she spoke of her brother, to the shadow in that lit window. Marcellus entered quietly. "You've involved yourself in staff matters again," he said cautiously. Kael's expression hardened. She's not just staff. Marcellus arched a brow. Then what is she? Kael didn't answer. He didn't have an answer. All he knew was this. Serenya Vale was slipping past the walls he had built, and he couldn't seem to stop her. The cracks deepen. For Serenya, the ride home had changed everything. It wasn't just that Kael Draven had defended her, or given her a ride. It was the way he had looked at her building, not with disgust, not with pity, but with a strange, unreadable intensity. It scared her. It thrilled her. And as she lay awake listening to Eli's soft breathing, she realized the truth she dared not speak. Kael Draven was no longer just her employer. He was becoming something more, something dangerous. The week after Halden's fall from power was uneasy, like the quiet before a storm. Serenya felt the shift every time she entered Draven Tower. Staff no longer dared insult her openly, but their silence was worse. Their eyes followed her, sharp with suspicion, heavy with questions she couldn't answer. Still, she kept her head down. Every day she scrubbed, polished, and hauled supplies until her muscles screamed. At night she collapsed into her small bed beside Eli's, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. Just a little longer. Hold on. But her life had already been altered, and Kael Draven was at the center of that change. A private summons. It was late evening when the call came. Marcellus approached her with his usual stern expression. "Vale," he said, "the CEO requires your assistance upstairs." Serenya blinked. "Me? In his office?" Marcellus nodded once. "Now." Her pulse raced as she followed him up the polished stairwell to the top floor. The elevator was reserved for executives, but tonight Marcellus bypassed it, choosing the stairs instead. As if this visit was not meant to be witnessed, when they reached the double doors of Kael's office, Marcellus pushed them open. "Go in, he's waiting." Serenya hesitated, then stepped inside. The office at midnight. Kael's office was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city's glittering skyline, endless light stretching into the horizon. The room was lined with dark shelves filled not only with business documents, but leather-bound books worn with age. A grand piano sat near the far window, its surface gleaming under the moonlight. Kael himself was there, standing with his back to her, hands clasped behind him. He didn't turn immediately, as though deep in thought. "You wanted to see me, sir?" Serenya asked softly. Finally, he turned. His face was unreadable, but his eyes carried something restless, something unguarded. "I did," he said. "Come closer." She obeyed, her steps cautious across the thick carpet. Kael studied her, his gaze unsettling in its intensity. Then, to her shock, he gestured toward the piano. "Do you play?" Serenya blinked. "I know, sir. I've never touched one." Kael's lips twitched. Was it amusement? Or something else? "Sit." Heart pounding, she lowered herself onto the polished bench. The keys stretched before her like an unfamiliar language. Kael moved to stand beside her. Then, with an ease that surprised her, he pressed a single note. A deep, resonant sound filled the room. "This was my mother's instrument," he said quietly. Serenya glanced at him. His expression had softened, distant. "Your mother? She taught me before." He stopped, jaw tightening. "Before she passed." The admission startled her. Kael Draven never spoke of personal matters, yet here he was, revealing a piece of himself no one else seemed to know. The music. Before she could respond, his hands moved across the keys. A low, haunting melody filled the office, each note precise yet filled with emotion. Serenya stared in awe. The ruthless CEO, feared across boardrooms, was here creating music aching, beautiful music that spoke of longing and grief. She felt her throat tighten. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Kael's eyes flickered toward her, then back to the piano. "Music doesn't lie. Numbers, contracts, people, they all deceive. But a note is always true." The confession hung heavy in the air. Serenya's chest ached. She wanted to say something, to thank him for trusting her with this glimpse of his soul. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, she simply listened, letting the music wash over her. When the final chord faded, silence returned, thick and fragile. Kael looked at her, his mask slipping just slightly. "You'll keep this to yourself." "I will," Serenya promised without hesitation. For a moment, neither moved. The city glowed behind them, but in that office, the world had narrowed to just the two of them. A glimpse behind the mask. Later that night, Kael dismissed her with a curt nod, but Serenya walked home shaken. She had seen something no one else had. Kael Draven, as more than a CEO, more than a ruthless machine. She had seen the boy who once sat beside his mother, learning melodies in a softer world, and it terrified her, because now, every time she thought of him, she would remember that music. Haldon's revenge. The next day, whispers resumed, this time darker, more venomous. She's been in his office. At night. No wonder she survived Haldon. She's not a cleaner anymore, she's his pet. Serenya tried to block them out, but her stomach knotted with dread. She could feel their stares burning holes through her. That evening, as she mopped the lobby, a familiar voice hissed behind her. "You think you've won, Vale?" She turned. Mrs. Haldon stood there, stripped of authority but not of malice. Her smile was sharp as a knife. "Enjoy it while you can. Men like Draven don't protect girls like you. They use them, and when they're done—" She leaned closer. "You'll be tossed aside with nothing." Serenya's hand tightened on the mop. She wanted to argue, but fear sealed her lips. Haldon chuckled darkly and walked away. Unspoken questions. That night, Serenya lay awake beside Eli, staring at the cracked ceiling. Haldon's words gnawed at her. Was she right? Was Kael merely toying with her out of boredom, curiosity? And yet, when she remembered the music, the way his voice softened when he spoke of his mother, her heart whispered otherwise. She was caught between two worlds, the brutal reality Haldon described and the fragile possibility she had glimpsed in Kael's hidden self. Which one was true? Kael alone. Meanwhile, in his penthouse, Kael stood once again before the piano. His fingers hovered over the keys but did not play. His mind was elsewhere on Serenya Vale, the girl who had walked into his office and seen the part of him he had buried for years. Marcellus entered quietly. "She's become a distraction," he said bluntly. Kael's jaw tightened. "She's a challenge." "Challenges are for boardrooms. This is something else." Kael didn't reply, but in the silence, the truth was clear even to him. Serenya Vale was more than a distraction. She was a crack in his armor, and through that crack, light was beginning to slip in. The storm approaches. Neither of them knew it yet, but forces were already gathering. Haldon's humiliation had sparked new resentment within the company. Alliances shifted in shadows, and both Kael and Serenya stood at the center of the storm to come. For now, though, there was only the fragile memory of music, one note of truth in a world built on lies. And it was enough to change everything. The storm arrived not with thunder, but with whispers. In the dim corridors of Draven Tower, conversations halted the moment footsteps approached. Haldon's demotion had left a scar, and scars always drew predators. Those who once aligned with her for safety now weighed their options carefully. The tower was a hive of rumors, every word dripping with speculation, about Kael's sudden defense of a lowly cleaner, about the late-night office meetings, about power shifts happening behind closed doors. Haldon was not gone. She was only waiting. Haldon's vow. In a darkened bar a few blocks from the tower, Mrs. Haldon nursed a glass of wine, her manicured fingers tapping against the rim. Across from her sat two mid-level managers, men who owed their promotions not to merit, but to her cunning manipulations over the years. "You saw how he humiliated me," Haldon spat, her voice low but venomous. "Draven thinks he's untouchable, but no man is without weakness." Haldon spat. "He was man." The men exchanged uneasy glances. "Haldon, he's the CEO." "No one dares." "Silence," she hissed. "Do you know what I've discovered? His weakness is her, that little maid, Serenya Vale." The name dripped from her tongue like poison. Haldon leaned forward, her smile sharp. "If we can't topple the king, we break the girl who holds his attention, and when she falls, he falls with her. As we may be the tension per expect to the soulmate, as we relating, another waiting with a firm and divilifect." The managers swallowed nervously, but their silence was answer enough. The first seeds of rebellion had been planted. Morning routine. Serenya had no idea of the storm brewing. Her mornings were simple. Rise before dawn, prepare Eli's breakfast, coax him into his school uniform, and hurry him onto the crowded bus before rushing to the tower herself. On one such morning, Eli's small hand tugged at her sleeve as they approached the bus stop. "Sis?" he asked. "Why are people mean to you at work?" Her heart squeezed. "Who told you that?" "I hear things," Eli mumbled, kicking a pebble. "They whisper when you think I'm not listening. Haveth the laws drive to placy, and Goding and true self, in the ferifration with preservality. Consenting. Into grief." Serenya forced a smile. "Don't worry about that, Eli. I'm fine." But inside, her chest tightened. She was not fine. She was balancing on a blade's edge, and she didn't know how much longer she could hold. An unexpected encounter. That afternoon, as Serenya scrubbed the marble floors near the executive wing, Eli appeared, wide-eyed and curious. "Eli," she gasped, dropping her rag. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to see where you work," he said innocently. Before she could scold him, a deep voice echoed down the hall. Vale. Kael Draven stood at the end of the corridor, his presence commanding as always. But his gaze was not on Serenya, it was on the small boy beside her. Eli froze, eyes widening. Is that your boss?" Serenya's heart thudded. "Eli, apologize. You shouldn't be here." Kael approached, his gaze flickering between them. Then, to Serenya's utter shock, he knelt to Eli's height. "You must be Eli," Kael said, his voice softer than Serenya had ever heard. Eli blinked. "You know my name?" Kael's lips curved faintly. "Of course. Your sister talks about you." Serenya's cheeks flamed. "Sir," Kael ignored her fluster, extending a hand. Eli hesitated, then shook it with surprising solemnity. "You're really tall," Eli said. For the first time, Serenya thought she saw something close to amusement flicker in Kael's eyes. "The ice breaks." Kael straightened, his gaze resting briefly on Serenya. "Take your brother to the lounge. He shouldn't be wandering the halls alone." Serenya nodded quickly, ushering Eli away. Her heart raced not just from fear of reprimand, but from the startling way Kael had lowered himself to her brother's level. It was a small act, but to Serenya, it meant everything. Later, in the lounge, Eli whispered, "He's not scary at all. He's kind of cool." Serenya didn't know how to respond. Her image of Kael Draven, the cold CEO, untouchable and ruthless, was unraveling, replaced by a man who could kneel before a child without hesitation. And that frightened her more than anything. Halden's shadow. Unbeknownst to them, Halden had been watching. She had followed Serenya discreetly for days, her rage simmering hotter with every glimpse of Kael near the girl. When she saw the interaction with Eli, her lips curled in a cruel smile. A child, a brother. Now she knew how to strike. The dinner invitation. That evening, as Serenya finished her shift, Marcellus appeared again. His expression was unusually tight. "Vale, the CEO requests your company for dinner tomorrow night." Serenya froze. "Dinner? With him?" Marcellus gave a curt nod. "At the penthouse, 7 o'clock sharp. Don't be late." Her stomach flipped. She wanted to refuse, to insist it was improper, but she also knew she couldn't. Kael Draven's word was not a suggestion, it was law. When she returned home, Eli's excitement only added to her nerves. "Dinner with your boss? Wow, sis, you're moving up in the world." Serenya forced a laugh, but her thoughts swirled. Why dinner? Why now? And what did it mean for her already fragile position? Kael's preparation. Meanwhile, in the penthouse, Kael stood before his wardrobe, frowning at his own reflection. He had hosted countless dinners for investors, politicians, and foreign dignitaries. Yet, tonight felt different. He found himself discarding suits he normally wore without a second thought, his chest unsettled by a feeling he refused to name. Marcellus observed quietly. "She's not like the others," he said finally. Kael's jaw tightened. "No, she isn't." Serenya's dilemma. Back in her small apartment, Serenya stared at her modest dresses. None seemed right. She had no jewels, no finery. Have it just plain fabric worn thin from years of use. Eli tugged at her arm. "You'll look perfect, no matter what." She hugged him tightly, blinking back tears. "I hope so, Eli. I really do." The storm on the horizon, and so the pieces shifted on the board. Halden plotting revenge in the shadows, Kael lowering his guard in ways that unsettled him, Serenya caught between fear and the dangerous spark of hope. Tomorrow night, in the glittering heights of Kael Draven's penthouse, their worlds would collide again, but somewhere, Halden was already setting her trap. And when it closed, no one would escape unscathed. The city gleamed beneath the night sky, towers shimmering like jagged stars. From the heights of Draven's penthouse, the world below seemed distant, almost unreal. The glass walls reflected the glow of chandeliers, the muted hum of the city replaced by the soft clink of crystal, and the faint notes of a piano hidden somewhere in the vast space. For Serenya Vale, standing at the threshold, it felt less like entering a home and more like stepping into another world. Arrival. She clutched the strap of her plain dress, pressed and cleaned as best she could, and tried to still her trembling hands. Marcellus, ever the composed shadow, opened the door wider. "Miss Vale," he said simply. Her throat tightened. She had expected a table full of executives, perhaps politicians or investors, but the sight that greeted her was nothing of the sort. Kael Draven stood alone near the window, his tall figure outlined against the glittering skyline. He turned when he heard her, his expression unreadable, though his gaze lingered longer than usual. "You came," he said, his voice lower, softer than the clipped tones she was used to at the tower. Serenya swallowed. "I was told it was not optional, sir." A faint smirk touched his lips. "Marcellus does have a way of framing things. Thinks a du encroefted in chattled in soused. Thinks a du encroefted and donated." The table. The dining room looked like something out of a dream. The table was set for two. The plates fine porcelain, the silver gleaming. Candles flickered in tall crystal holders, casting warm light across polished wood. Serenya hesitated at the sight. "Just us? Who else would there be?" Kael replied calmly, pulling out a chair for her. The gesture startled her more than his words. Kael Draven, who commanded empires, who never bowed, never yielded, was waiting for her to sit. She lowered herself awkwardly, murmuring a quiet thanks. Small cracks in the mask. Dinner began with silence. Serenya stared at the food-delicate cuts of roasted duck, vegetables arranged like art. She had never seen anything like it. Her stomach churned from nerves more than hunger. Kael noticed. "You're not eating." She flushed. "It's just, it looks too perfect to touch." For the first time, something flickered in his gaze, amusement, faint but real. "Food is meant to be eaten, not worshipped. Try it." She obeyed, timidly cutting into the meal. The flavors burst on her tongue, rich and complex. She couldn't help the small sound of surprise. Kael's lips curved. "Better than your usual dinners, I imagine." Her cheeks burned. "Instant noodles don't exactly compare." He was no the prouder to the three the life to cult. There was silence. Then to her shock, Kael chuckled. It was a low sound, brief but genuine, and it unsettled her more than his anger ever had. A glimpse of humanity. As the meal continued, Serenya found herself speaking more than she expected. Kael asked questions, not the sharp, businesslike interrogations he gave his board, but softer ones, about Eli, about how long she had worked, about the small apartment she kept. She tried to answer cautiously, aware that every word could be a trap, yet his eyes, usually cold steel, seemed different tonight, warmer, curious. "Eli looks up to you," Kael remarked at one point. "You've raised him well. It was now not where the 10 fractions. He was not faith with the life the fines of Kudfansing." Her throat tightened. "I've done my best. It hasn't been easy." Kael's gaze lingered. Strength rarely looks easy, but it leaves its mark. Their eyes met across the table, and for a heartbeat, the city disappeared. It was only them. The silence charged, her pulse loud in her ears. She looked away quickly, fumbling with her fork. The dance. After dinner, Kael rose. "Come." She blinked. "Where?" "The piano." He led her to the far corner where the instrument sat gleaming, black and imposing. He touched the keys, and music filled the room, rich, powerful notes that carried through the air like a story without words. Serenya stood frozen. She had never imagined Kael Draven at a piano, his hands moving with such precision, such grace. When the melody softened, he looked up. "Dance." Her eyes widened. I don't know how." "Then follow." He extended a hand. Her heart raced as she placed her trembling fingers in his. His touch was firm, steady, guiding her across the floor in slow, deliberate steps. She stumbled once, but his hand tightened, steadying her. The world blurred around them, the flicker of candles, the glitter of glass, the city lights beyond all of it melted into the warmth of his hand, the weight of his gaze. For a moment, she forgot who he was, forgot who she was. It was only Kael and Serenya, shadows and sparks. Halden's watch. But beyond the penthouse glass, far below in the shadows of the city, another pair of eyes watched. Mrs. Halden leaned back in the leather seat of her car, binoculars resting in her lap. Her lips curved into a cruel smile as she saw the figures moving together inside. "Perfect," she whispered. "Let him fall. The higher he climbs, the harder the crash." She picked up her phone, dialing a number. "It's time," she said coldly. "Begin with the boy." The close of night. When the music ended, Serenya realized how close they stood. His hand still held hers. His breath brushed her hair. She pulled back quickly, flustered. I should go. Eli's waiting." Kael didn't stop her. He only studied her with that unreadable gaze, as though memorizing her retreating form. "Vale," he said as she reached the door. She froze. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "Thank you. For tonight." Her heart stuttered. She nodded quickly and fled. Back at home, Eli was already asleep when she returned, his small figure curled beneath a threadbare blanket. Serenya sat beside him, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. For the first time in a long time, her heart felt unsteady, not from fear, but from something far more dangerous. Hope. In the shadows, across the city, Halden raised her glass in silent triumph. The girl thought tonight was magic. She had no idea she had just stepped into a carefully laid snare, and when it closed, not even Kael Draven himself would be able to save her. The ordinary morning, that wasn't. The day began like any other. Serenya left Eli with a neighbor before hurrying to the tower, clutching her worn cleaning supplies. Eli had been cheerful, promising to work on his drawing until she returned. She kissed his forehead. "Stay close, Eli. Don't open the door for anyone but Mrs. Wren." "Yes, Mama," he said, eyes wide and trusting. But even as she walked away, unease gnawed at her chest, a chill she couldn't explain. Whispers in the tower. At Draven Enterprises, the corridors buzzed with tension. Whispers trailed Serenya like shadows. She could feel eyes on her, sharp and calculating. A secretary muttered just loudly enough, "Can you believe the CEO entertaining her? A janitor." Another voice snickered, "The mighty Draven must be desperate." Serenya lowered her gaze, focusing on her mop, but the sting burned deep. When the elevator doors opened and Kael stepped out, the whispers died instantly. His presence cut through the noise like a blade. His gaze flicked briefly to Serenya, just enough for her to feel seen, acknowledged in a way that silenced her shame. But someone else was watching too. From her office down the hall, Mrs. Halden's lips curved into a venomous smile. The first strike. Late afternoon. Serenya's phone buzzed as she polished the marble floor. She almost didn't check it, workers weren't supposed to, but the message made her blood run cold. "Eli is missing." Her knees gave way, the mop clattering loudly. She dialed Mrs. Wren in panic. The woman's voice trembled. "He went downstairs to play. I turned away for one moment. When I looked again, he was gone." "Serenya, I'm so sorry. When the darties in was the rand and backeted. It is one's to doing. I have too many, and by the rand, in the sided by the side. No, it is not after the prest of the left and mine's comment. It is one to the speaking and do it, the onden to the prest of. Has God he do explain." Her vision blurred, breath caught. She dropped everything and bolted for the elevator, but before she could leave the building, 2 security guards blocked her path. "Orders from Mrs. Halden," one said flatly. "You're not to leave." Serenya's world tilted. My son is missing, let me through." They didn't move. Kael's intervention. The commotion drew Kael like a storm. His voice was thunder when he appeared. "What is happening here?" The guards stiffened. Mrs. Halden instructed. "I instructed nothing of the sort," Kael cut sharply. "Stand down." They hesitated. Kael's eyes turned to ice. "Do you serve Halden or me?" That was enough. The men stepped aside. Serenya stumbled past them, nearly collapsing. Kael caught her arm. "What's wrong?" Her voice cracked. "Eli, he's gone. Someone took him." For a heartbeat, Kael's mask faltered. Then, something fierce ignited behind his eyes. "Marcellus," he barked. The advisor materialized instantly. "Find the boy," Kael ordered. "Every camera, every contact. Now." Into the streets. Kael didn't wait for answers. He swept Serenya into his car, the engine roaring to life beneath his hands. The polished composure of the CEO was gone, replaced by raw urgency. "Tell me everything," he demanded, eyes on the road. Serenya choked out the story, her words tumbling between sobs. Kael's jaw clenched tighter with each detail. "Halden," he muttered. "She dares." Serenya's head snapped toward him. "You think she? Why would anyone? He's just a child." Kael's hands tightened on the wheel. "Because they can't touch me directly. So they target what I—" He stopped. Words caught between fury and something softer. A mother's fear. The search stretched into hours. Night swallowed the city, and still there was no sign of Eli. Serenya sat hunched in the back seat, fists pressed to her mouth to keep from screaming. Every corner they turned, every streetlight they passed, she expected to see him. "I can't lose him," she whispered hoarsely. "He's all I have." Kael glanced at her in the rearview mirror. His voice softened, almost unrecognizable. "You won't lose him. I swear it." She met his eyes, and for the first time, she didn't see the CEO. She saw a man willing to burn the city to ash if it meant finding her son. The call. At last, Marcellus's voice crackled over the car's speaker. "We have something." A black van was seen leaving the complex at 3:15. Plates traced to a shell company, tied to Halden's accounts. Serenya gasped. "Where did it go?" "The 7-70s ones that flowed and sevened, where the no threes that alas." "Warehouse district. Dockside." "But sir," Marcellus hesitated. "It's heavily guarded." Kael's lips thinned. "Good. Then they won't expect me to walk in." The warehouse, the docks reeked of salt and rust. Shadows stretched long across corrugated steel. Kael stepped out of the car, his presence radiating authority even here. Serenya clung to his sleeve, her heart pounding. "Stay close," he said quietly. 2 guards approached, armed. Kael didn't flinch. "This is your only warning," he said coldly. "Bring me the boy." They sneered. Orders are orders. The next moment was a blur. Kael moved like a predator, swift, efficient. One guard dropped with a strike to the throat. The other disarmed before his weapon left its holster. Serenya stared, stunned. This wasn't boardroom Kael. This was something darker, sharper, and yet, terrifying as it was, he was on her side. Reunion. Inside the warehouse, Eli sat bound to a chair, fear wide in his eyes. "Mama!" he cried the instant he saw her. Serenya rushed forward, cutting through the ropes with trembling hands, sobbing as she gathered him into her arms. I'm here, my love." Kael stood behind them, his shoulders rigid, gaze sweeping the room for threats. Then, a slow clap echoed through the shadows. Halden's entrance. Mrs. Halden emerged, her expression smug. "Touching," she drawled. The mighty Kael Draven, reduced to playing bodyguard for a cleaning woman and her brat. Serenya stiffened, clutching Eli tighter. Kael's gaze could have frozen fire. "You've crossed a line." Halden tilted her head. "No, you did, Kael. By lowering yourself. By letting her into your world. This," she gestured towards Serenya and Eli, "this is weakness. And weakness destroys empires." Kael took a step forward, his voice a blade. "Then you should know better than to provoke mine. The groide have a lies of the brost canst do the blend. Cancer despited with 1,000 brays, and with a 9. Testin setted, and with a writing suvid. The rive of the setted, and sove. The escape." Halden's men began to close in, weapons gleaming. Kael shifted subtly, placing himself between them and Serenya. "Take the boy and run when I say," he whispered without looking back. Serenya's blood froze. "What about you?" "Don't argue. He needs you more than I do." Her throat ached, but she nodded, holding Eli tight. The tension cracked like glass as Kael lunged, his movements precise and brutal. The warehouse erupted in chaos shouts, gunmetal flashing. Serenya clutched Eli and ran, heart hammering as Kael's command echoed in her ears. Into the night. They burst into the cold night air, Eli gasping against her shoulder. Behind them, the sounds of battle raged. Marcellus's car screeched into view. Doors flung open. "Get in!" Serenya hesitated, looking back toward the warehouse. For one agonizing heartbeat, she feared she would never see Kael again. Then, through the shadows, he emerged, bloodied, bruised, but standing. His eyes found hers, and even across the distance, the force of his will anchored her. They would survive this. Together. The ride back. The car sped through the midnight streets, headlights carving tunnels of light through the dark. Serenya sat wedged between Marcellus and Eli, her arms wrapped tightly around her son, as though he might vanish again if she let go. Eli clung to her neck, whispering, "Mama, I was so scared." "I've got you," she soothed, kissing his hair. "No one will hurt you again." Across from them, Kael sat in silence, blood drying at the corner of his mouth, his shirt torn at the sleeve. The glow of the dashboard lights carved sharp lines into his face, but his eyes were alive with something fierce and unyielding. Serenya wanted to thank him, to say the words clawing at her chest, but her throat was raw, her heart too heavy. For now, she only held Eli tighter. The aftermath. At the penthouse, Marcellus had already summoned doctors. They examined Eli first, assuring Serenya he was unharmed beyond bruises. Relief made her knees buckle, tears slipping down her cheeks as she kissed Eli's forehead again and again. Only then did she notice Kael being stitched up by another doctor. He sat with his usual composure, as though he weren't the man who had fought through a small army hours earlier. Serenya approached hesitantly. "You're hurt," He glanced up, meeting her eyes. "I've had worse," she swallowed. "Still, thank you. For saving him. For saving me." Kael's gaze softened almost imperceptibly. "You don't need to thank me, Serenya. Protecting what matters is instinct." The words lingered between them, heavy with meaning. Whispers in the boardroom. But elsewhere in the city, Halden's smirk had already twisted into a mask of strategy. By dawn, whispers spread like wildfire. Headlines questioned the CEO's judgment. "Draven Empire compromised?" blared one. Another sneered. From boardroom to back alley, CEO's secret liaison with cleaning staff. Board members grumbled behind closed doors, some calling for Kael's removal, others demanding explanations. Halden fed the flames, her voice smooth, measured. "Kael has let sentiment cloud his judgment," she told them, "and sentiment is poison to power." Confrontation. At headquarters the next day, Serenya walked with her head down, clutching Eli's hand. The stares were worse than knives. Some looked at her with pity, others with contempt, but none with kindness. When she reached the elevator, Kael was waiting. The sight of him, immaculate suit, mask firmly back in place, stole her breath. He looked untouchable again, the Kael Draven who ruled from shadows. But when his eyes flicked to Eli, a crack appeared in the facade. "You're safe now," he said quietly. Eli beamed. "Thanks to you, Mr. Kael. In the not forgetherlotu have not flaction disaxi. Cancelotu have not flax. Sitside. Have not flaxioned onto tisactioned. The not forgetherlotu." The corner of Kael's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Almost. Behind closed doors. Later, in his office, the storm broke. "Halden won't stop," Marcellus warned, placing a stack of tabloids on the desk. "She's already poisoning the board. If you don't act, I will." Kael cut in, his voice sharp. "But not on their terms." Serenya, who had been standing silently, finally spoke. "She's using us, isn't she? Me, Eli, to make you look weak." Kael's gaze snapped to hers. "She thinks you're a liability. She's wrong." Her throat tightened. "Am I?" For a moment, silence stretched. Then Kael rose, closing the distance between them. "You," he said slowly, his voice low, "have reminded me what strength really looks like. You endure, you protect, you fight when the world gives you nothing. That isn't weakness, Serenya. It's power." Her heart pounded. She hadn't realized until then how close they stood, his shadow enveloping hers, his breath brushing her skin. She whispered, "Kael." The sound of his name on her lips seemed to shatter something in him. His hand lifted hesitant, almost reverent, before brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. The world outside roared with judgment, but in that office there was only them, the space between them, charged, fragile, dangerous. Eli's voice. The spell broke when Eli burst through the door, holding a drawing. "Mama, Mr. Kael, look." He proudly displayed a sketch of the three of them stick figures, holding hands beneath a giant sundae. Kael froze. Serenya's breath caught. Eli beamed innocently. "We're a family." Silence thickened. Kael looked at Serenya, his eyes unreadable, but something undeniable stirred there. Serenya's cheeks burned. "Eli, sweetheart, go wait outside for Mama." When the boy skipped out, the room remained heavy with what he'd said, what they couldn't yet admit. A dangerous promise. Kael exhaled slowly. "Halden thinks she's found my weakness." Serenya forced herself to meet his eyes. "And has she?" He stepped closer, his voice a low vow. "No, she's uncovered my purpose." Her heart stumbled. She knew what he meant, though he hadn't said the words outright, and that knowledge terrified her more than anything Halden could scheme. Because if Kael Draven truly meant it, if he had set his unshakable will on protecting her and Eli, then Halden wasn't the only one who should be afraid. Halden's countermove. Across town, Halden raised her glass in a toast to the gathered board members. "Let him play the savior," she said smoothly. "Every step closer he takes to that woman, every ounce of humanity he shows, it will be the rope he hangs himself with." Her smile was razor-sharp, "And when the empire falls, it will be mine." The boardroom was a fortress of polished oak, marble floors, and a silence so sharp it could slice through steel. Serenya stood just outside its heavy double doors, clutching Eli's small hand. She wasn't supposed to be here, she wasn't supposed to ever step foot into this rarefied sanctum of corporate power, but fate had never cared much about where she belonged. Inside, voices already thundered. Kael's baritone cut through them all. clipped and commanding, but laced with something Serenya had only recently begun to recognize: desperation. "You will not drag her name through the mud," Kael's voice boomed, reverberating against the high ceilings. "This company was built on discipline and innovation, not on destroying the innocent for your convenience." Halden's oily tone responded, dripping with false civility. "With respect, Mr. Aurelian, your attachment to this woman is clouding your judgment. The media's already whispering. Investors are wary. Share prices dipped 3% just this morning. How much are you willing to sacrifice for a cleaning woman?" Serenya's stomach twisted. The word cleaning woman landed like a slap across her face. She was proud of the work that kept her alive, that kept Eli fed. But in this gilded cage of power, her identity was reduced to an insult, a weakness to be weaponized. Eli squeezed her hand tighter. "Mama," he whispered, "why are they so mean?" She couldn't answer. Her throat burned, her heart hammering against her ribs. Inside, Kael's chair screeched as he rose to his feet. "You dare question my judgment, while half of you leech off this company's success without lifting a finger." His anger was volcanic, barely restrained. "Serenya has done nothing but work herself to exhaustion for your spotless floors, your pristine offices. And you think you can spit on her dignity because she doesn't wear silk or diamonds? Shame on you." The room crackled with tension. Halden chuckled, low and deliberate, like a predator circling prey. "Passionate words, Kael, but investors don't invest in passion, they invest in stability. And Serenya," he spat her name as if it were poison, "is instability incarnate." A murmur of agreement rippled across the table. Serenya's legs trembled. Instability. Was that what she was? A weight around Kael's neck? A storm dragging him under just when he tried to climb higher? Suddenly the door creaked open. One of the assistants, face pale with nerves, gestured. "Miss Serenya, the board has requested your presence." Her blood froze. Eli's hand slipped from hers as if even he sensed she was about to step into fire, into the inferno. Every eye in the room burned into her the moment she entered. Serenya felt the weight of their contempt pressing against her skin, trying to suffocate her. She wanted to run, but Kael's gaze anchored her. His storm-grey eyes softened for just a flicker when they met hers, silently promising, "You're not alone." Halden rose with a mocking bow. "Ah, the lady of the hour. Tell us, Miss Serenya, do you understand the chaos you've caused?" Her lips parted, but no sound came. Chaos? She'd caused chaos? All she'd done was scrub toilets until her fingers blistered, sweep corridors until her back screamed, collapse from exhaustion because she had no choice. Another board member chimed in, voice sharp. "This company is not a charity. We cannot afford to be entangled in scandals about fraternization with the staff." Falmer, heat flamed across her cheeks. Scandal, fraternization. They painted her like some seductress clawing her way up through Kael's wealth, when in truth, she'd done everything to avoid attention. Kael slammed his fist against the table, rattling pens and glasses of water. "Enough. She has endured your venom long enough." But Serenya raised a trembling hand. "Kael," she whispered. Her voice barely carried across the polished room, yet it silenced even him. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to stand straighter. "If you all believe I am a burden, then say it to my face. Don't throw insults at me as though I am a ghost who cannot hear. I am not here to ruin anyone's company. I am here because I needed to work, because I have a son who deserves to eat, to grow, to live with dignity." The room shifted uncomfortably, but Halden smirked. Touching. A tragic story, but still irrelevant. Love, poverty, and personal struggle, none of these belong in the boardroom. Her voice cracked, but she pushed on. "No, maybe they don't, but humanity does. And if you strip it away, if you reduce people to numbers on a chart, then what are you but vultures feeding on the bones of those beneath you?" Gasps rippled across the room. Serenya's knees nearly gave out, but Kael moved to her side, steadying her with a hand on her back. Halden's smirk faltered, though only for a second. "Beautiful speech. Pity it won't save you." Fractures in Kael. That night, long after the board had adjourned with threats hanging thick in the air, Kael sat in his private office, the city skyline glowing like embers beyond the glass. Serenya sat opposite him, her shoulders curled inward, her spirit frayed but unbroken. "You shouldn't have defended me," she whispered. "Not like that. They'll tear you apart." Kael's jaw tightened. He leaned forward, his voice low, raw. "Let them try. For too long, I've let them dictate every decision, every breath I take. But not this, not you." Her heart thudded painfully. She shook her head. I'm just a cleaner. You're everything they want you to be. Powerful, untouchable. If you tie yourself to me, you'll drown. His eyes burned into hers. And if I let you drown alone, Serenya, then what am I? A man or a machine? Tears welled hot and fast. She wanted to scream, to beg him to let go before the weight crushed them both. But part of her, a small traitorous part, ached to believe him. Silence stretched between them, taut as a bowstring. Then Kael spoke again, his voice softer, almost broken. They've already begun digging into my past. Halden will find something soon, something I fought to bury. When he does, the war will spill beyond this company. It will destroy everything. Serenya's breath caught, then push me away, before it's too late. He laughed bitterly, running a hand through his midnight hair. Too late, Serenya. It was too late the moment I found you asleep in that restroom. You've haunted me ever since. Inat the feast of ones into there, and soft to the fischel who was like failed, and have a motheration, haufer, sephen, revend, into the fella. And five to the proven reve, and have 'em the feast of the channeled, and fallest in the gen. The flames ahead. When Serenya finally left the office, Eli asleep in her arms, Kael stayed behind. Alone with the city's glow, he poured himself a glass of whiskey he never touched. His reflection stared back at him in the window, powerful, wealthy, but fractured. Halden's words echoed in his skull. Investors don't invest in passion, they invest in stability. And yet, passion was the only thing that reminded him he was alive. He clenched his jaw, making a silent vow. If Halden wanted war, then Kael would give him one. But this time, he would not fight only for the company. He would fight for her, for Serenya, for Eli, for the fragile, impossible thing blossoming in the ashes of their lives. The storm was coming, and Kael Aurelian had never been more ready to burn. The storm didn't break with thunder, it came with headlines. By dawn, the city's media was ablaze. Digital billboards screamed with Kael Aurelian's face, his eyes shadowed under harsh lighting, accompanied by one damning phrase, "The CEO with blood on his hands." Serenya stood frozen in the corner of her tiny apartment, Eli tugging at her shirt for breakfast, as the morning news blared from a battered television. Words like scandal, cover-up, corruption stabbed through her ears. A grainy photo of a younger Kael filled the screen, handcuffed, his expression carved from stone. Her knees buckled. She clutched the counter to keep from collapsing. "That's not," her voice broke. "That can't be him." But it was. Kael, the man who had defended her against the board, the man who held her when she trembled, the man who told her she haunted him, now exposed to the world as something she didn't recognize. The report droned on. Records from 15 years ago suggest Kael Aurelian was involved in a violent altercation that left one man hospitalized. Though charges were dismissed under suspicious circumstances, new evidence uncovered by journalist Halden Vaynar paints a darker picture. Halden, of course. Serenya's hands shook as she switched off the television. Eli peered up at her, wide-eyed. "Mama, why are they saying bad things about Mr. Kael?" She forced a smile that trembled on her lips. "They don't understand him, sweetheart. Sometimes people want to hurt others with lies." But deep inside, she wasn't sure. Was it all lies? Or had Kael hidden this truth from her, from everyone, at the tower? Meanwhile, Aurelia's tower, normally a beacon of steel and glass brilliance, had become a besieged fortress. Reporters swarmed the plaza, microphones thrust like spears at every employee who dared step out. Kael sat in his office, blinds drawn, the city's accusations pounding against the glass like relentless rain. Before him the board gathered, their faces masks of fury and fear. "You've doomed us," one snarled. "This company's stock has plummeted 9% in 2 hours," another spat. "Investors are withdrawing." Halden stood smugly at the head of the table, holding a tablet with scrolling headlines. "Gentlemen, ladies, this is what happens when leadership is built on a lie. Aurelian's past is not only a liability, it is an infection. The sooner we excise him, the sooner we can heal." Kael's jaw clenched so tight it could have cracked. He wanted to rip the tablet from Halden's hands, to shatter it, to shatter him. But his body betrayed no movement. "You think this will destroy me?" Kael's voice was low, dangerous. "You forget, Halden, I built this empire from nothing. I've survived worse storms than you could ever conjure." Halden's smile widened, shark-like. "Then let's see if you survive losing her." He's in quick to the fesses, Serenya in the crosshairs. By midday, Serenya herself had become a headline. Paparazzi camped outside her apartment. Tabloids smeared her name with insinuations: gold digger, mistress, single mother exploiting a CEO's guilt. The final blow came when someone leaked Eli's photo. The boy's innocent face splashed across gossip blogs, circled in red like prey. Serenya ripped the paper apart with shaking hands. Fury burned through her exhaustion. They could call her names, drag her through the mud, but Eli, he was just a child. She stormed into Aurelius Tower through the employee entrance, ignoring the stares and whispers. Her heart thundered as she marched straight to Kael's office. The secretary tried to stop her, but Serenya's voice cut sharper than steel. "Move." The door slammed open. Kael was inside, back turned to her, shoulders bowed in a way she'd never seen. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded. He stiffened but didn't turn. Silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Finally he spoke, voice hoarse. "Because I knew the moment you saw the truth, you'd run." Her chest constricted. "What truth, Kael? That you were arrested? That you hurt someone? Who are you?" Slowly, he turned. His storm-grey eyes were raw, stripped of all their usual armor. "I was 19, angry, lost. My father was gone, my mother barely surviving. A man cornered me in an alley, someone who thought he could take everything I had left. I fought back, too hard. He lived, but I never stopped hearing his bones break." Serenya's breath caught. The weight of his confession pressed down on her, but what crushed her more was the torment in his eyes. "They covered it up," he continued. "Said a scandal would ruin the family name. Money changed hands, records buried. But Halden, he's dredged it all back." She wanted to reach for him, to soothe the storm raging inside him. But then Eli's face flashed in her mind, splashed across papers, dragged into Kael's war. Her voice trembled. "And what about us? Me, Eli? Do we just burn with you?" The breaking point. Kael strode forward, closing the distance between them until his shadow swallowed hers. His hands hovered near her shoulders, aching to touch but holding back. "I would burn the world," he whispered fiercely, "before I let it touch you." Tears blurred her vision. "But it is touching us, Kael. Eli is just a child. He doesn't deserve this. Maybe Halden is right. Maybe I'm the instability dragging you down." His chest heaved as if she'd struck him. For a moment, the CEO, the unbreakable titan, looked like a boy again, cornered in an alley with nothing but his fists. "No," he said, voice cracking. "You're the only thing that's kept me from drowning." The words shattered something in her. She wanted to believe him, but the world outside their walls was merciless, and she was so tired. She pulled back, shaking her head. "I don't know if love is enough to survive this." The silence that followed was more painful than any scream. Halden's triumph. That evening, Halden appeared on national television, his smirk framed by immaculate suits and gleaming lights. "Kael Aurelian has deceived this city for years," he declared to millions. "Behind his empire lies violence, corruption, and scandal. And now he shields a woman and her illegitimate child, siphoning this company's integrity for personal indulgence. Is this the leader we deserve?" So, the audience roared with outrage. Stock tickers plummeted live across the screen. Watching from her apartment, Serenya felt her chest tighten. Kael's empire was crumbling, and so was her heart. Kael alone. In the dead of night, Kael stood at the edge of his skyscraper's rooftop. The city sprawled like a sea of dying stars beneath him. The wind tore at his coat, howling like the ghosts of his past. For the first time in years, he felt alone. Truly, utterly alone. He thought of his father's disappointed glare, his mother's weary silence. He thought of the man he'd left broken on the ground all those years ago. He thought of Serenya's trembling voice. Maybe love isn't enough. His fists clenched. He wanted to believe love was enough, but as the storm gathered around him, he wasn't sure anymore. The city was merciless. By the end of the week, Kael Aurelian's name had become a curse whispered in cafes, shouted on the streets, plastered across glowing headlines. Stock markets bled red, Aurelius Tower was besieged by protesters, and investors scrambled like vultures to tear apart what remained of his empire. Inside his penthouse, Kael looked less like a titan of industry and more like a ghost. His tailored suit jacket lay discarded on the floor, his tie undone, storm-grey eyes hollow. Serenya stood across the room, arms wrapped protectively around Eli, who clung to her like a shadow. The television's harsh glow painted all their faces with accusations. Violent past, corrupt leader, scandalous affair. Her chest tightened with each word. Every headline was another blade cutting into Kael, but the blood was splattering onto her son as well. "Kael," she whispered, breaking the silence. "This can't go on. Eli, he can't live like this. Paparazzi chased us down the street this morning." He was crying so hard he couldn't breathe. Kael's head snapped up, anguish raw in his eyes. "I'll fix it. I'll make it stop." "How?" she shot back, voice trembling. "By fighting harder. By burning what little you have left. They don't care about truth anymore, Kael. They care about blood." Eli tugged at her sleeve. "Mama, I don't want them to take pictures of me anymore." Her heart cracked. She bent, pressing a kiss to his hair. But her gaze never left Kael's. Halden's offer. Later that night, when the city's lights blurred through rain-streaked glass, Serenya received an unexpected visitor, Halden Vanar. He stood in the dimly lit hallway of her apartment, immaculate in his dark coat, a predator cloaked as a gentleman. "Miss Serenya," he said smoothly, "may I come in?" Her instinct screamed to slam the door, but Eli peeked from behind her, eyes wide. Reluctantly, she stepped aside. Halden wasted no time. "You are a mother. You want safety for your child. I can give you that." He pulled an envelope from his coat, thick with documents. "A new apartment, a private school for Eli, financial security for the rest of your life. All you need to do is walk away from Kael Aurelian." Her stomach churned, so this was always about destroying him. Not justice, not truth, just power. "How's the Savon? And Wellesley wants the land of two apprives. And well said, and Weldon to Dea. How have apprived, and Weldon 12 the doers the land of the Leafland, and Halfon the wear the stut, and Remembragen, and the breast, and Weldon weld. The land of the doet." Halden's smirk widened. "Justice is a luxury. Power is survival. Take the deal, Miss Serenya. Protect your son before Kael drags you both into the fire with him." Eli tugged her hand, sensing the tension. Serenya's grip tightened, grounding herself. Her voice was ice. "Get out." Halden's eyes narrowed, but he slipped the envelope onto the counter before leaving. "Think carefully. Kael's empire is already ashes. All that's left is to decide whether you'll be buried in them." Breaking point. When Kael arrived later that night, rain dripping from his coat, Serenya thrust the envelope at him. "He came here," she hissed. "Halden came to my door. He offered me money. Schools for Eli if I left you." Kael's eyes darkened, the storm inside him raging. He ripped the envelope in half, then again, until scraps of paper fluttered to the floor like snow. "I'll kill him," Kael growled. "No," Serenya's voice cracked. "That's what he wants, Kael. He wants you to lose control, to prove to the world that you're nothing but a violent man hiding behind glass towers." Kael's chest heaved, breath ragged. For a moment, the mask of the CEO slipped, and she saw the broken boy beneath the one who had fought too hard in an alley, who had been haunted ever since. "I can't lose you," he whispered. "Not after everything." Her throat ached with tears. "And I can't lose Eli. He's all I have. If staying with you means putting him in danger every day." Her voice faltered, but the truth clawed free. "Then, I can't do this anymore." Kael staggered back as if struck. "You don't mean that." "I do," she whispered, though every fiber of her soul screamed in protest. "I have to choose my son." Eli's voice. The silence shattered when Eli, small and trembling, stepped forward. "Mr. Kael?" he asked softly. Kael dropped to one knee, his imposing frame folding in on itself. His hands shook as Eli's tiny ones clutched them. "Are you going to leave us too?" the boy whispered. Kael's heart split clean in two. He gathered Eli into his arms, pressing his face into the child's hair. "Never," he vowed, voice breaking. "I would never leave you, either of you." Serenya's tears spilled hot and relentless. She wanted to believe him. She did believe him. But belief wouldn't stop the cameras flashing in Eli's face, the cruel words hurled in playgrounds, the vultures circling. She turned away, unable to bear the sight of Kael crumbling. The choice. By dawn, the apartment was silent. Serenya sat at the kitchen table, staring at the torn remains of Halden's envelope. Her chest was heavy with a choice that felt like ripping her own soul apart. Kael slept fitfully on the couch, shadows etched deep into his face. Even in rest, his body was coiled, like a man awaiting battle. Eli curled against her side, small breaths warm against her arm. She kissed his hair, whispering to herself, "He comes first, always." Her decision crystallized like ice in her veins. She would end it, for Eli, for his safety, his future. And when Kael woke, she would tell him. Kael's realization. But Kael, even in broken slumber, sensed the shift. He awoke to the sight of Serenya's packed bag by the door. His heart stopped. "Serenya," he rasped, voice raw. "Don't." Her eyes were red, her face pale, but her resolve burned. "I can't stay, Kael. I love you, but love doesn't shield a child from the world's cruelty." He crossed the room in 2 strides, gripping her arms. "Don't you see? That's exactly why we have to fight. Because if we run now, Halden wins. He wins, and Eli learns that monsters get to decide who we become." Her tears spilled, but she shook her head. "Sometimes protecting someone means walking away." Kael's grip faltered. His storm-grey eyes, once unshakable, were wet with anguish. "Then walk away," he whispered. "But know this, Serenya, I will fight until my last breath. For you, for Eli, even if you never come back." Even. The air between them fractured, fragile as glass. And for the first time, Serenya didn't know whether her heart was breaking because she was leaving him or because she still wanted to stay. The conference hall shimmered under the glow of crystal chandeliers, each light refracting into 1,000 tiny diamonds. Cameras were everywhere, flashing, clicking, capturing every angle of the day that would decide the future of Kael Draven and his empire. Serenya smoothed the skirt of her simple navy dress, her hands trembling despite her efforts to appear calm. She wasn't supposed to be here. This was a battleground for billionaires, not a cleaning lady from the lower districts. Yet Kael had looked her in the eye that morning and said, "If I fight alone, I lose. If you stand beside me, we win." Now she stood at his side, Eli's small hand clutching hers like a lifeline. Halden strode across the stage with the confidence of a predator sensing victory. His tailored suit gleamed, his smile as sharp as a blade. "Ladies and gentlemen, board members, shareholders," he began, his voice booming through the speakers. "We gather today not merely to discuss profits and losses, but to decide whether this company will continue to be led by a man whose past is riddled with scandal and deception." The crowd shifted uneasily. Reporters leaned forward. Cameras zoomed in. Kael remained silent, his posture straight, his gaze steady. Beside him, Serenya felt the weight of the moment crush her chest. This was it, the endgame. Halden's eyes glittered. Years ago, before he became the so-called visionary CEO, Kael Draven concealed a truth. His father's fortune, this empire, was not built on brilliance, but on fraud. Illegal investments, falsified documents, money stolen from the very people this company claims to serve. And Kael. He paused for effect, letting the silence coil like a snake ready to strike. Kael helped cover it up. Gasps echoed through the hall. Photographers scrambled for shots of Kael's face. Serenya's heart pounded. She knew parts of this story, whispers Kael had shared in quiet, vulnerable moments. His father had made mistakes, yes, but Kael had spent years trying to undo them, building something real, something honest. Halden slammed a stack of files onto the podium. "Here is the proof. Leaked emails, financial records, testimonies. You trusted a man who lives a lie." The crowd erupted in murmurs. Some faces turned away from Kael, others stared in shock. Serenya squeezed Eli's hand tighter. The boy looked up at her, his eyes wide but unafraid. "Mama," he whispered, "don't let them hurt him." Her chest ached. She couldn't stay silent. Before Kael could speak, Serenya stepped forward. The cameras swiveled instantly, as though no one expected her to dare interrupt. "Enough," she said, her voice trembling but loud enough to carry across the hall. "I know I don't belong here, not in this room full of wealth and power. I'm just someone who cleans your floors, empties your trash. But I've seen Kael Draven, not as the man on your magazine covers, but as a person, and I know he doesn't hide behind lies." Halden sneered. "And who are you exactly? A maid? A charity case he picked up from the gutter?" "Yes," Serenya answered, her chin lifting. "I am a maid, and I was in the gutter. But he didn't pick me up, he saw me. He believed I was worth more than the labels this world slapped on me. Do you know what that means? It means he's a leader who sees people, not numbers, not pawns, people." Her words rippled through the hall. Some looked uncomfortable, others leaned in, intrigued. Kael finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "What my father did was wrong. I won't deny it. He made choices I've spent my life trying to correct. Every project I've built, every innovation, every job created, it was to repay the debt he left behind. And yes, I kept that truth hidden because I feared moments like this, when someone like Halden would use it to destroy everything." but hiding it doesn't erase what I've done to make it right." Halden barked a laugh. "Nice speech, but words don't fix corruption." Kael's eyes hardened. "No, actions do. And while you, Halden, claw at power by tearing people down, I build. That's the difference between us." The board murmured again, some heads nodding faintly. Halden slammed his fist against the podium. "You expect us to believe a cleaning woman's testimony over documented proof?" Serenya felt Eli tug her hand. She looked down. He was holding a small drawing crumpled from his pocket, a picture he had made of their little family, himself, her, and Kael, all smiling beneath a big, bright Sunday. Tears blurred her vision. She took the drawing and held it up for the cameras. "This is the truth," she said, her voice breaking. "You can show papers, numbers, old mistakes, but this boy, my son, knows Kael as the man who reads him stories, who listens to his dreams, who protects us when the world tries to crush us. That's the man standing here, and no piece of paper will ever prove otherwise." House of this. The hall fell silent. Even the cameras seemed to hold their breath. For the first time, Halden faltered. His smile slipped, his confidence cracking. One of the senior board members cleared his throat. "Mr. Draxler, if what you say is true, that you've been repaying your father's sins, then you must show us. Not just words. Transparency." Kael nodded firmly. "Agreed. Starting today, I'll open every record, every account. No more shadows. But understand this, if I fall, so does everything we've built together, and Halden here will pick the bones clean." All eyes turned to Halden. His smirk was gone, replaced by the twitch of a man cornered. Serenya stepped closer to Kael, slipping her hand into his. For a moment, she thought he might pull away, to shield her from the chaos, but instead, he held tight, as though she were his anchor. Slowly, applause began. One person, then another. Within seconds, the hall was filled with clapping, louder and louder, until even the reporters were caught in the swell. Halden's face twisted with fury. "You fools," he spat. "You'll regret this." But his words drowned beneath the roar of approval. Security moved in, whispering about fraud investigations, Halden's own schemes coming to light at last. And just like that, the predator was caged. Kael exhaled, his shoulders sagging with exhaustion. Serenya turned to him, her heart thundering. "You did it," she whispered. "No," he said softly, his eyes locked on hers. "We did it." Eli ran forward, throwing his arms around both of them. The three stood together under the relentless camera flashes, but for once, Serenya didn't care. Let the world see. Let them all see. This wasn't just the story of a millionaire CEO. It wasn't just a scandal or a redemption arc. It was the story of a man who chose love over power, and a woman who found her strength in the most unexpected place beside him. As they walked out of the hall, Kael leaned close and whispered, "Serenya, the world is watching. Are you ready for that?" She smiled through her tears. "As long as you're beside me, I'm ready for anything." Eli squeezed their hands tighter. "Can we go home now?" They laughed, tired, shaken, but victorious, and as the heavy doors closed behind them, the future stretched wide open. For the first time, it wasn't terrifying. It was theirs.